but some only saw the dirt where I saw destiny. Said I was trapped in the past. They didn't know I built my future there.
The Montana wind always carried a story. Sometimes it was the whisper of incoming snow, sometimes the lowing of cattle, sometimes the distant rumble of thunder. For a long time, it carried the weight of my dream, a dream I'd shared with someone who never quite heard its melody. My name is Ryan, and I was born into this land, into the legacy of the high plains, into a ranch that had weathered generations. When I was 28, the ranch was struggling, teetering on the edge of what felt like inevitable collapse. My father had done his best, but the old ways weren't cutting it anymore. I saw a future, a modern vision where technology and tradition could meet, where sustainable practices weren't just a buzzword but a lifeline. I poured every ounce of my being into it, working sunup to sundown, sketching plans late into the night. It was more than a business. It was my blood, my heritage, a promise to the land itself. That's when Ashley came into my life, a burst of city bright lights against the vast Montana sky. She was from Denver, vibrant and quick-witted, her laughter a stark contrast to the quiet hum of the ranch. We met at a rodeo in Bozeman, a chance encounter that felt like fate. For a while, her presence here felt like a breath of fresh air, a different perspective. I remember showing her the newborn calves, her eyes wide with a wonder I mistook for understanding. I told her about my plans, the rotational grazing, the solar panels I dreamed of installing, the idea of diversifying into something more than just beef. She'd smile, nod, and squeeze my hand, saying she loved my passion. But as the months turned, the initial charm of the rustic life began to wear thin for her. The silence of the plains, which I found calming, she called isolating. The hard work, the mud on my boots, the early mornings and late nights, she saw as a burden. Our conversations slowly shifted from shared dreams to her complaints. The nearest decent coffee shop was an hour away. The dust got everywhere. The internet was too slow. Every call with her friends from Denver ended with her looking at me with a wistful expression, like she was missing out on a grander, more exciting life. I tried. God, I really tried. I drove her into Bozeman every weekend, bought her flowers, even cooked her dinner after working a 16-hour day. I wanted her to see the beauty I saw, the potential, the deep, abiding connection to something real. But she only ever seemed to see the dirt. The doubt started to creep in, a slow, insidious thing that whispered in the quiet moments between chores. Was I asking too much of her? Was I truly trapped, as she often implied, in a past that offered no future? I'd stand on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the distant Rockies in hues of orange and purple, and feel a hollow ache in my chest. The ranch demanded everything, and it felt like our relationship was constantly competing with it and losing. She started spending more time in Bozeman, claiming she needed a break, needed to feel connected to civilization. I understood, or at least I tried to. I wanted her to be happy, but the happiness she sought felt miles away from the life I was building, the life I had to build. The air grew thick with unspoken resentments, a tension that vibrated through the old farmhouse. I could feel her pulling away, her eyes no longer seeing me, but rather the ranch as a cage, holding me captive, and by extension, holding her. The hope I'd once had, that she would somehow grow to love this life, began to fray, unraveling thread by painful thread. It was a slow, agonizing process, like watching a healthy sapling wither in a drought. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with a whimper of resignation from her, and a sharp, stinging slap of words from me. We were standing in the kitchen, the scent of fresh-baked bread still lingering from my morning efforts, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. She'd just returned from a weekend in Denver, full of stories about new restaurants and art galleries, her voice bright with an energy I hadn't seen in weeks. Then, with a sigh that seemed to deflate the very room, she'd turned to me. "This isn't working, Ryan," she'd said, her voice flat. "I can't do this anymore. This life, it's just too much, too isolating, too demanding." I tried to argue, to remind her of our plans, of the progress we were making, of us. But her eyes were already elsewhere, already picturing a different future. She told me I was stuck, that I was clinging to something that was already dead, trapped in the past. She said I was too blind to see the world moving on without me. Her words cut deeper than any physical wound. She'd found someone else, she confessed, an urban real estate agent, someone who understood her, someone who lived a life that wasn't covered in dust and animal hair. She packed her bags that afternoon, her designer luggage a jarring sight against the worn wooden floorboards. As she drove away, the gravel crunching under her tires, I felt a hollowness so profound it was almost physical. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It felt like a betrayal of my entire existence, a confirmation of every doubt she'd planted in my mind. Despair settled over me like a heavy Montana snow, burying everything in a thick, suffocating blanket of cold. The first few months after she left were a blur of raw grief and relentless work. I barely slept, barely ate. The ranch became my sanctuary and my prison. Every sunrise was a reminder of another day she wasn't here. Another day I had to face the daunting task of saving this place, alone. Her words, trapped in the past, echoed in my ears, mocking me. But somewhere, amidst the dust and the sweat and the aching loneliness, a flicker ignited. A stubborn refusal to let her be right. I channeled every ounce of my heartbreak, every stinging memory of her disdain, into the land. If I was trapped, I would turn that trap into a fortress. I started with the irrigation system, a massive undertaking that required new pumps, new piping, and hours of research. I spent evenings studying ecological farming, looking into rotational grazing patterns that would rejuvenate the soil, not deplete it. I invested in drone technology for herd monitoring, something my dad initially scoffed at but quickly saw the benefits of. It was slow, painstaking work. There were days I wanted to give up, days the exhaustion was so profound I questioned my sanity. But then I'd see a patch of healthier grass, a stronger calf, a subtle shift in the ecosystem, and I'd feel a surge of purpose. This wasn't just about saving the ranch anymore. It was about proving something to myself, about finding my own worth independent of anyone else's approval. The realization dawned on me gradually. Her leaving wasn't a failure, it was a redirection. It liberated me to pursue my vision without compromise, without the constant need to justify my choices to someone who would never understand. Years passed, blurring into seasons of hard work and quiet triumphs. The ranch, once a struggling relic, began to transform. We installed solar arrays that powered our entire operation, reducing our carbon footprint and our utility bills. The rotational grazing and revitalized soil led to healthier cattle and richer pastures. I diversified, just as I'd planned, opening a small agri-tourism venture, High Plains Heritage Ranch. People from all over the country came to experience a taste of authentic Montana ranch life, to learn about sustainable farming, to ride horses across the open plains, and to watch the stars blaze in the unpolluted night sky. The cabins I built from reclaimed barn wood were booked months in advance. The local papers ran features, then national travel magazines came calling. Our story, my story, was one of resilience, innovation, and a deep respect for the land. Financial success followed, but more importantly, a profound sense of accomplishment and peace settled within me. I was no longer just a rancher. I was a steward, an innovator, a man deeply connected to his purpose. The man Ashley had left, the man she'd called trapped, had not only saved his family's heritage, but had forged a new path, a path of liberation from the narrow confines of her judgment. I still remembered her, of course, but the sting was gone, replaced by a quiet gratitude for the clarity her departure had ultimately brought. My life felt full, vibrant, rooted in something enduring and true. Then, a few weeks ago, a ghost from the past flickered into my inbox. An email, casual but too carefully worded, signed Ashley. She'd seen the article, she said, in that travel magazine. She was so impressed, so proud of me. She went on to mention how much she missed the open spaces, how she'd come to understand the beauty of nature now that her own urban life felt so hollow. Her relationship with the real estate agent had soured, she hinted, and the city, once so exciting, now felt suffocating. It was clear what she was angling for, a subtle suggestion that perhaps she'd been wrong, that maybe we could revisit what we had. My stomach tightened briefly, a phantom ache, but it quickly passed. I replied politely, professionally, but kept my distance. Yet, she persisted, suggesting she come visit, just to see the ranch, to catch up. I agreed, knowing it was a necessary confrontation, a final laying to rest of old ghosts. I needed to see her, not for her sake, but for mine, to fully appreciate how far I'd come. The day she arrived, the Montana sky was impossibly blue, the kind of blue that makes you feel infinite. I was out with my working dogs, guiding a herd of yearlings across the lower pasture, the rhythmic creak of my saddle a familiar comfort. My horse, Smoke, moved with an easy confidence, his breath misting in the cool morning air. I saw her car approach, a sleek, city slicker SUV, kicking up dust on the gravel road. She stepped out, dressed in what I could only describe as designer Western wear, pristine jeans, a perfectly tailored denim shirt, and boots that looked like they'd never seen a day's work. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless, a stark contrast to the rugged landscape around her. She walked towards me, a practiced smile on her face, trying to evoke nostalgia. "Ryan," she began, her voice softer than I remembered. I realized now what a fool I was. "This land, it's magnificent. I miss us." I dismounted Smoke, my boots sinking slightly into the rich, dark soil. I met her gaze, my own eyes clear and steady, unclouded by old hurt or lingering affection. I gestured with an open hand to the vast, thriving landscape around us, the healthy cattle, the distant glint of the solar panels, the green expanse of the irrigated fields. "Ashley," I stated, my voice calm but firm, "this land demands dedication. It demands grit. It demands a willingness to get your hands dirty, to embrace the struggle, to see beyond the immediate. You saw dirt, I saw potential. You chose convenience, I chose roots. The man you left was trying to save this place. The man you see now saved it, and he saved himself from superficiality." The words hung in the crisp air between us. Her carefully constructed facade wavered, then crumbled. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of dawning realization, a painful understanding that the gap between her past judgment and my present reality was not merely wide, but insurmountable. There was no going back, no picking up where we left off. The man she left behind was not the man standing before her. I watched her shoulders slump, her gaze falling from mine to the ground, no longer seeing the dirt with disdain, but perhaps with a dawning appreciation for what it had become. She stood defeated, a city girl lost in the vastness of a success she had once scoffed at. I didn't need to say anything more. She had her answer, clear and undeniable, etched into every acre of the High Plains Heritage Ranch. With a quiet nod, a gesture of finality, I turned back to my herd. Smoke nudged my hand, and I swung back into the saddle, the familiar leather a comforting presence. My dogs barked softly, eager to get back to work. As I rode towards the setting sun, a quiet sense of accomplishment radiated from me, a warmth that had nothing to do with her presence or absence. My connection to this land, to this life I had built with my own hands, was deep and unwavering. It was a connection born of struggle, forged in fire, and now, finally, untainted by the fleeting desires of a woman who only valued me when I was already thriving, not when I was struggling to build. I had saved the ranch, and in doing so, I had saved myself. The wind still carried stories, but now, it whispered of strength, resilience, and a peace that was truly mine.